Blitz begins by showing a scene of a police sergeant named Tom Brant, who wakes up at night while sleeping on the sofa. When Brandt accidentally looked out the window, he saw the suspicious movements of 3 teenage boys near a parked car. Immediately he brought a hockey stick and approached them. When Brandt confronts the 3 teenagers, one of them asks for his wallet. Brandt, who has a temperamental nature, immediately hits the teenager using the hockey stick. It turned out Brandt's suspicions were true. The 3 teenagers were breaking into car windows. Brandt then scolded them and left immediately. A few days after the incident, the beating case went viral in the mass media until finally Brandt was called to his superior's room. The man was a police chief. His boss said that Brandt had been involved in several beatings. 1 year ago, Brandt also beat a criminal until he passed out. Brandt's boss then threatened to fire him if he couldn't change his attitude. Bravely, Brandt told his boss that he would make matters worse if he was fired. He then returned to his desk. A policewoman named Elizabeth Falls suddenly came to Brandt's desk. Falls said she currently feels like a failure in rehab and is very hopeless. This happened because of her 2-year undercover mission in the drug squad. But Brandt encouraged her by saying that her rehabilitation had only been running for a few months, and it was natural that it had not been successful. In the next scene, Brandt meets a man named James Robert, a superintendent of police, to attend his wife's funeral. After the event, they went for a drink at a bar to cheer up Robert and laugh together. The scene then switches to a policewoman named Sandra Bates, who is walking alone at night. Suddenly, a mysterious man appeared in front of her. The man shot Bates, killing her instantly. Brandt, who had just returned from the bar, received a call regarding the murder case and immediately went to the scene. When he arrived at the scene, Brandt asked for information from a man who was taking his 2 dogs for a night walk. Unfortunately, the man was not there when the murder occurred and could not provide any information. The following day, a man named Porter Nash came to the police station. He said Police Chief Brown asked him to come over to replace Inspector Robert, who extended his leave. Nash is assigned with Robert to handle several cases that occur, but he got a bad reception because he was suspected of being gay. The scene switches to Falls' house, where a man named John, her childhood friend, comes to ask for her help. He told her that he and his 2 friends had beaten a man last night. Falls, who heard John's story, felt sorry for him and wanted to help him. But with a note, the victim is still alive. Falls asked John to go home and immediately went to the office. Arriving at the office, Falls met Brandt to talk and ask for opinions regarding her friend's case. Brandt suggested that Falls meet a man named Craig Stokes. The scene moved to the news agency. A man named Harold Dunlap gets a call from a mysterious man who offers exclusive news about a serial police murder.
I'm offering you information, you don't even say hello.
The condition is that Dunlap must report every incident of a murder that killed a police officer. The man also said that there would be 8 new cases related to police killings in the future. After the phone was hung up, the mysterious man immediately carried out the second policeman's murder. He approached a policeman who was in the car and shot him. The second murder case was exposed and heard again by the police. Brandt soon meets a man named Radner, who often provides information to him in exchange for money. He told about a man named Barry Weiss who was expelled from the Peacock Gym members and some other information. However, after the information was obtained, Brandt only gave Radner the chips and left him. Then Brandt immediately went to Peacock Gym to find information about Weiss. That evening, Brandt came to Nash's house to discuss the cases they were working on. In between conversations, Nash also told why he was transferred to Brandt's place. Nash had beaten a pedophile with many important connections to escape the law. Then someone put a safety device in his locker and accused him of being a pedophile. However, when Nash felt hopeless about his career and almost committed to end his life, he was instead transferred to Brandt's place and became an inspector. The next scene shows Robert, who is shopping at the supermarket. After that, he came to his office to return to work even though he was still on leave. However, when he came to the chief of police's office, he was asked to retire early. Robert then refused. He wanted to keep working, even if only as a field police officer. Meanwhile, Brandt and Nash head to Weiss's apartment. They managed to find Weiss and immediately checked the room for evidence. When Brandt saw Weiss's face, he recognized him. It turns out he was the guy he hit while in the billiards arena 1 year ago. They immediately left Weiss's place. Weiss, who felt suspicious, immediately packed his things and left the apartment. After moving in, he follows Robert to his apartment to make him his next target. Weiss managed to break into his apartment, pretending to be a cable TV clerk. Robert, who heard a knock on the door, immediately opened it. But suddenly, a man pointed a gun at him. Robert also managed to dispel it until they were struggling. But finally, Weiss managed to kill Robert with a hammer. After killing Robert, Weiss took the time to watch TV while eating snacks at Robert's house and in front of his corpse, like a psychopath. Weiss immediately brought some items and burned several other items until the fire grew. Not long after, the fire brigade arrived. On the other hand, Weiss was cycling leisurely around the scene while calling Dunlap. He gave the news that he had just killed the third policeman. At that time, he referred to himself as Blitz to Dunlap. After that, Weiss went to a parking lot in the old building to store Robert's belongings in the trunk of his car. The next day, the news immediately became trending on the newspaper's front page and shocked the police station. They felt embarrassed by the incident. Brandt, who had just arrived, was shocked to hear the news of the murder that had killed Robert. The police on duty have brought the remaining evidence to the police station. Brandt and Nash immediately checked. Brandt finds a half-burnt Peacock Gym membership paper. He immediately ordered his men to determine whether Robert was a member of the Peacock Gym or not. In the next scene, Radner, who sees an opportunity to get money from this case, decides to handle it himself. He immediately looked for evidence by digging in the trash near Weiss's residence. Radner managed to find a note in Weiss's name. As Radner was walking away from the parking lot, he accidentally saw Weiss's car parked there. Radner immediately prized Weiss's car trunk. After he succeeded, he was surprised to see some of Robert's belongings were there. But Radner did not immediately report it to the police. He chose to call a reporter and offer a news story in exchange for £50,000. Dunlap immediately agreed because he really needed the information. Then Dunlap immediately went to the old building to meet Radner. When Dunlap arrives there, Radner tells Dunlap that he knows Blitz's true identity. But without them knowing, it turns out that Weiss is also behind them. After that, the two of them left the old building. Weiss immediately seized the opportunity by removing all the items from his trunk. Dunlap and Radner went to a bar to make deals. Radner asks for the money to be paid first, and then he will give Blitz's real identity. They then agreed. After Radner received the money, he immediately went to the toilet to count the money. Surprisingly, Weiss went into the toilet and found Radner, who had not yet had time to reveal his identity to Dunlap. In a relaxed manner, Weiss intimidated Radner, who looked increasingly frightened. Eventually, he kills him and takes Radner's money away. On the other hand, Falls, who was helping her friend's case, went to see Stokes and told him her problem. Knowing that John's victim was still alive, Stokes agreed to help her on the condition that Falls accompanied him to drink tonight. Eventually, the two met at a bar and drank late into the night. Unbeknownst to them, Weiss is monitoring Falls from across the street to make her their next victim. On the other hand, Brandt, who was looking for data and the identity of Barry Weiss, discovered that Weiss had been caught by the police several times due to minor cases. Surprisingly, all the policemen killed by Blitz were cops who had arrested Weiss. Brandt, who discovered Falls' name, had caught Weiss and ordered his team to immediately head to Falls' house. Stoke and Falls, who were together on their way home, experienced a bit of an argument because Falls felt that Stoke was just playing with her and wasn't serious about helping her case. Finally, Falls chose to walk alone into her house. However, Weiss suddenly attacked her from behind before she could open the house door. Fortunately, Falls managed to dodge the attack. Not long after that, John came and immediately attacked Weiss from behind, but his attack failed and made him fall into the street. Weiss stomped on his head so hard that he died. It wasn't long before Brandt and the other cops arrived. Falls told Brandt that she didn't think her friend would have to die to help her. Immediately, Brandt and Nash went to Weiss's apartment, but nothing was there. But Nash was still trying to find clues in Weiss's room. Nash finds an old Weiss photo and asks Brandt to publish the photo as a fugitive. Some residents who saw the photo circulating in the media recognized Weiss's face and provided information to the police. The police, who received news that Weiss was in a hotel, immediately came to him with the team. When they got there, they broke down the hotel room door, but it was empty. It turned out that Weiss had run away from the hotel room window. Brandt, who knows this, swiftly runs out of the hotel to chase Weiss. Finally, they both ran in the middle of the road until they stopped at an old station. Brandt, who managed to block Weiss, looks furious and wants to immediately vent it. At the right time, the police team arrived and immediately blocked the emotional Brandt. Weiss also seemed to smile happily, seeing that Brandt couldn't hit him. Arriving at the police station, they immediately interrogated Weiss. However, during interrogation, Weiss asked for the assistance of a lawyer and a slice of sandwich. The request was granted, and his lawyer accompanied him in the interrogation room. The lawyer said that if within 48 hours there were no charges against Weiss, the police must release him unconditionally. Unfortunately, Brandt and Nash don't have much evidence to sue him. Eventually, they both went to his superiors and said they couldn't charge him without enough evidence because Weiss had lost track of him. After coming home from work, Brandt and Nash, who feel disappointed, choose to go to the bar for a drink together. Brandt discusses Nash's story regarding his beating of a pedophile outside the law at that time. Brandt makes an analogy: if the Weiss case cannot be resolved through legal means, it must be resolved without legal means, namely with his own hands. But Nash disagreed and immediately left him. After leaving the bar, Brandt went straight to his office to see Weiss that very night. He reminded Weiss of the case last year when he beat him, who was also caught beating a husband and wife. Brandt angered Weiss by saying that he and the other policemen laughed at the CCTV footage of the time Weiss was beaten. After that, Brandt asked Weiss to immediately admit all his actions because it was dangerous for him out there. But Weiss arrogantly refused. The following day, Weiss was acquitted and immediately left the police station with a triumphant smile. At the door of the police station, there were already many reporters covering him. The next scene is at Robert's funeral. All police colleagues were present at Robert's funeral procession in the pouring rain. Among the crowd, an unknown man appeared in a police uniform and walked up to Brandt. The man turns out to be Weiss, who targeted Brandt as his next victim. Brandt, who got a short message on his cell phone from someone, immediately left the cemetery for his car. Weiss immediately followed him. Weiss followed Brandt to the roof of a building and directly pointed his gun from behind. However, Weiss was surprised when the person looked at him. It turned out that the man was not Brandt but Nash, while Brandt appeared from behind him and beat him with a crowbar. In a position of urgency, Weiss could still threaten to sue them and report his case to the mass media. Ignoring Weiss' words, Brandt immediately fired his bullet right at his head, using the gun he had used to kill the police all along. Brandt and Nash immediately tidied up the evidence to be removed and left Weiss' body on the building roof. Brandt said that this serial murder case against the police will be a case that will never be solved. The moral message that we can learn from this film is that no matter how good we hide the ugliness, one day it will indeed be revealed.